Hello, everyone. Welcome to Faith to Lead. It's awesome that you're here. Today we're going to delve into a topic that answers a question that I'm asked all the time when I'm consulting. What's the difference in leading a team of volunteers from leading a team of employees? It's looking at volunteer and nonprofit leadership essentials. But let me pause. It doesn't matter if you're leading a team of volunteers or a business team where you're paying everyone. Much of it is the same with some nuances. So I want to thank you for joining us today. And hey, this is what I want you to do. I want you to share this podcast, subscribe to Faith to Lead, or visit us at faithtolead.com. Share this, especially with people today that are leading a nonprofit organization. Because people are asking me about what's the difference between profit and nonprofit settings. When I go to work, I know how to do all that stuff. Everyone there, even if I don't like it, I know the rules of the game. But then when I leave work, if I've got to volunteer in my community, if I've got to volunteer with the American Red Cross, if I've got to volunteer in my church, people aren't paid there. Are the rules the same? Should my leadership style be different? And I want to tell you right now is one of the specialties that I have is working in the nonprofit environment. I've worked in churches extensively. I lead a church, and I've worked in many other churches. And I spent many, many years in government that's really a nonprofit setting. And so there are some nuances, but there's some things that are the same. And people, they'll question you, and they'll say, how do you motivate volunteers? How do you schedule them? How do you challenge them? Should you challenge them? Well, if you have a conflict with a volunteer, can you tell them you have a conflict? Or will they say, well, I'm not getting paid here, I'll just quit. So then based on them saying that, you really can't deal with the conflict because you don't want to lose the help that you have. Think if you've ever, worked in Little League, worked in American Red Cross, run a food pantry or anything like that. You say, I don't know how to manage conflict. Should I not manage conflict? What do I do? How do you penalize people? Can you penalize them? Should you? Or should you just say, thank you for whatever you can give because we should just take it? So we're going to look at some of those items, those questions today. And don't forget, I want you to share this podcast, subscribe to Faith to Lead, or visit us at faithtolead.com, because this show right here, when we look into these insights, it will help you move the needle. But first, let me give you a little biblical text. And this is to anyone in the nonprofit community. And I know how you feel. Remember this scripture. There's a scripture that comes out of Matthew chapter 9, right around verse 35. And it says, but when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them, because they were weary and scattered like sheep having no shepherd. And then he said to his disciples, this is the Lord, the harvest truly is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray to the Lord of the harvest to send out more laborers. It's another way of saying we're outnumbered, we're outgunned, there's a lot of need, there's a great opportunity, but we don't have enough help. We need more people to help us bring this harvest to pass. It's like the farmer who has no help but 1,000 acres that he has to harvest. And there's a lot of leaders in nonprofit environments and for-profit environments who feel completely overwhelmed leading in that environment, where they feel understaffed, don't have the resources to compensate the people that you need, or the resources that you're compensating with them isn't as much as you know that they should get or that you could give. And then the opportunity to make a change, it may be clear, but the capacity to harvest it, to bring it to fruition, is limited. So if you're in a nonprofit environment, you're probably asking yourself the question every day, how can I pull off something so big if I don't have enough resource to do it? Should I be doing it at all? So there is a model that I want to unpack for you today that I think is amazingly done. It was actually written by someone in 2015 whose name is Wilkes. It was part of a dissertation based upon research. And it's a new model of volunteer leadership. I want you to get this because if you're in and serving in a nonprofit public community group or anything like that, first, don't quit. If you feel like, I want to quit, I want to give this up, I'm not getting paid for this, why am I doing it? Why am I dealing with these problems? Let me just help, but I don't want to lead it, I don't want to manage it. I want you to check out this show, listen to everything that we're going to say, because there's a model of volunteer leadership that's called the layered leadership model that will really help you. And basically, it was lessons that were done from a festival and some different research on the voluntary sector review. And what it basically delved into and looked into is it says nonprofits have a unique challenge in recruiting, training, and ensuring the commitment of their followers, and that leaders should really be looking to approach them in a way that's more transformational than transactional. So you actually want to be able to look at them and say, what are they looking for, the people who are following me in a nonprofit environment that's uniquely different than a for-profit? And in some ways, it's the same. One, being transformational means you got to exhibit qualities of integrity, confidence, and persistence. If I'm going to serve in a nonprofit volunteer setting, I still want to make sure my leader has integrity, that they're not willing to give up every day. Even if your followers say that, you can't. I want to see that confidence and that persistence. We can do this. We can do this for our town, our city, our community, our boys, our girls, our schools. They want to see that persistence that you're personifying. The second, they really, super important, want to have you facilitate team sharing, collaborative decision-making. Authoritarianism rarely works in a nonprofit setting. Okay, everyone, they asked me to run this team, run this committee. Here's my leadership style. I once served in the military. I once did this. This is the way my father told me to run it. So this is what I want you to do, and you to do. That rarely works in a volunteer capacity. Volunteer leadership, it's basically, you got to go in saying, how can we make some decisions together? What's going to be our rules of the game? Let's all get around a table and see how we're going to get there. You got to have a vision, sharing with them clarity and direction. Now, this is consistent between nonprofit and for-profit. People say, what's the difference? Many of these leadership functions are the same. In both environments, you have to be able to share a clearly articulated vision. And you want to be highly skilled. I'm going to emphasize this word, highly skilled in communication and problem solving. I can tell you from personal experience, how you say what you say in a nonprofit is extraordinarily important. Saying the right words the wrong way could be disastrous. You don't get many chances to set a person off. So you want to take the time out, you want to think it through, be exhaustive, and be scholarly in how you communicate what you say in those environments. There's a link between volunteer motivation and support for autonomy. It's when the persons join that team or they join that committee and they're saying, I want to help, but they really don't want to be strictly managed. I want to help, but they don't want their lives run. They want to support something, but they don't want to work under a dictator or someone who's self-actualizing. So you want to really ask yourself, how free and autonomous can I make them as quickly as I possibly can? I'm going to share a vision. We're going to do this as a team. And then, hey, I want you to have some input into this. I want you to drive this bus. This is going to be your deal. I believe you can do it. You want to be able to get into that language as soon as you can in a voluntary environment. And this is something that a lot of people, they know, but they really don't know their way around it. And because in a volunteer environment, you can't rely on monetary rewards or punishments. If no one's getting paid, you can't say you'll get fired, right? If no one's getting paid, there is no, well, I have to do this every day unless I can't keep my lights on. They don't have to do it. I could tell you when in working in the church, some people say, I already have a job. I didn't come here for a job, So why are they coming? What are they looking for? And don't miss this. It doesn't matter what environment you're in. Don't miss this. There must be a reward and there must be penalties, but it's the means. It's what reward people are looking for that you want to change, that you want to adjust. So in a voluntary environment, it's not a monetary reward. So it can't be a monetary reward or punishment. There's no raises. There's no dismissals. But what you do need to transact is to inspire and appeal to their higher order motives, inspiration, and sense of vision. Why a person volunteers is to say, I want to see a change in our community. I want to see a change in our children. I want to see a change in our teams. I want to see a change in whatever it is they're volunteering for. And that vision, that motivation is what's compelling them to be on that team. So what you want to do is, as you are achieving things, as you are accomplishing things, you want to connect them as quickly to the role they're playing in achieving that vision. Based on the fact of what you did yesterday, we just fed 500 people. I want to thank you even for doing that in that line, for taking those notes, for working as that team, as difficult as it was, the change that you made in our town, our city, our community, our church, our parish, our organization. What you are giving them is appreciation, not cash. Now, incidentally, that is just as important. Don't miss this in a for-profit environment. Sometimes a person will tell me and they say, well, they get paid. If they do a great job, they get a raise. But that's not even enough. Whether it's nonprofit or for-profit, remember this phrase, appreciation is half the laborer's reward. I learned that from my grandmother, that it doesn't matter even if you pay someone, they need to know that they're appreciated. Don't think that they know that because they got a check or a direct deposit. Say the words. In a profit environment, you have to do it. In a nonprofit environment, you still have to do it. But in a nonprofit environment, you have to be more profusive with it. And get this, more often than not, you have to do it publicly. That's where you get into all of those rewards where you gather people around and you say, we want to have an appreciation banquet. I'm going to bring you in front of everyone each time we do this and say thank you to you. That's what you're transacting, because what they're seeing is my role makes a difference. I feel valued. I feel like I'm part of something. I know that I'm building and accomplishing a vision that I had in my heart, that I had in my mind, and that's why I did this. Because when you're in a voluntary environment, you'll have many of the same conflicts, people working with people, challenges, disagreements, different rules of the game. How you want to do things isn't how I want to do things. And if you don't have a balancing set of appreciation, people will leave, they will quit, they will get personally exhausted, and they will walk out on you. I feel like I'm talking to myself today, but I'm telling you, it's the truth. So what you have to do, you have to balance that. You can't balance it with cash. You can't balance it with some of the same rewards that they would get on their job. But you can balance it with public appreciation, words of appreciation, connecting them to the vision, and not assuming that they know those things. You have to extend them. So you want to appeal to their higher order, their motives, their inspiration, their sense of vision, their accomplishment, their acknowledgement, actualizations of all of these rewards. And then don't miss what's called the socio-moral motivation. It's you're making this world a better place. You're making this town a better town. You're making this community a better community. You want to continually connect people back to what the mission is of your nonprofit. Because the mission, when they heard it and they heard the vision or they heard the strategy, that's what made them want to be part of it. That's what made them want to commit to it. So don't let that be something they hear in the beginning, but then as they volunteer, they never hear the words again about where we're going, how we're getting there, how we're doing, are we achieving what we set out to do? And most of all, and the effort and the time and the hours that they're dedicating, how it's committing to the achievement of that mission and that vision. You want to make that connection to them as often as you can, because it'll help fortify your team. Now, there is a graphic, and I'm going to describe this graphic to you because I know we're all listening in, and it's a graphic that has, if you will, think of a circle. Think of 3 concentric circles, like a smaller circle in the middle, a larger circle that's right outside of it, and an even larger circle that's outside of that. So think of 3 circles, the same nucleus, that are all together. And in that large outside circle, think of the word inspiring. On the inner circle, think of the word sharing and caring. And in the small circle, think of the word delivering. You got that? You got those 3 words? The first was inspiring. The second circle was sharing and caring. And the third circle is called delivering. And this right here is some deep research insight that's going to move the needle in a nonprofit environment, and get this, in just about all for-profit environments. Don't forget, I want you to share this information, subscribe to this channel, check this out on faith2lead.com where you'll see this graphic, because I'm telling you, this works. Why? Because on this research, it's one of the first times I've seen someone combined several leadership theories. They've combined elements of transformational leadership, and they've combined it with elements of servant leadership. How it all fits together. So the outer circle that said inspiring, you remember that? Inspiring speaks heavily to the transformational leadership. You should check out one of our previous shows where we unpack transformational leadership. On that inner circle that said sharing and caring, it's heavily sharing is dealing with like other aspects of transformational leadership. Caring is dealing heavily with aspects of servant leadership. So in that inner circle, there's sharing and caring. And in that central circle, the smallest circle in the middle, it's delivering. So again, that's 3 circles that are all concentric, inspiring on the outside, sharing and caring in the middle, and delivering all in the middle. Why is that important? It's because this model says how you should talk to a volunteer. And that's the number one question that I normally get. What should I say? Should I say anything? And the way this model works is it says you always start from the outside in. So in other words, the first thing you should tell someone if you're working in a nonprofit environment, it's not what they have to do, what time they have to report, when they have to have it done by, what the schedule is, what the budget is, what the resources are, who they report to. That's all on the delivering side. That's project management. That's the scheduling side. That's the action plan. It says that the way that you want to engage volunteers, you start by inspiring them. It starts by looking into different traits of being enthusiastic, of being proactive, of being self-confident, of being a risk taker. It's saying, we're going to take some risks with what we're doing. There's some things that have never been done in our community before. We're going to take it on. There's some challenges that are in front of us that have never been solved, but I believe that this team is going to be able to do that. And, we will be able to accomplish it. Even if we don't get all of it done, we will move the needle. And I believe we can move the needle. Now, you may say, wow, that's a lot of rah-rah talk, Aubrey. No, it's called inspiring. That before you start engaging with them, I'll say it again, you've got to inspire them. So what happens often is people will bring a project management mindset into a volunteer situation too soon. The first thing that person needs is they need a transaction. They need to be inspired. I can't tell you how often I've made that error, or I've seen others make that error in nonprofits, where they say, why doesn't anyone follow me? Why don't people want to come back? It's because when they went to that team or they went to that event, it became a job. And all it was a job. They don't know how to say that. Sometimes they say, it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't what I anticipated. I was hoping for something else. What they were hoping for was that they would be inspired by doing what they were doing. And we rushed straight into the delivery mode of what needs to be done. After you inspire them, that's when you get into the sharing and the caring. And that's where you're demonstrating concern for them. You're excelling in their communication skills. You're finding out ways to help the team work together. These are all aspects of transformational leadership that we had on the earlier show, and also servant leadership. You're communicating gratitude. Just thank you for being here. Hey, man, I know that you had a hard day at work today, and you didn't have to be here. So many times people will come out and they'll cancel out on me, but you didn't. It's raining outside. It's whatever. I know you got the weight of the world on your shoulders, but yet you still found it important to break out of all of that and to do something for these children, for this community, for this church, for this parish, for this town, for this city, whatever it is. Start there. I'm inspiring them. After I've inspired them, now I'm going to demonstrate some care for who they are as a person, acknowledge everything they've given up to do this, to participate with this team. And I'm going to share. I'm going to empower with them. I'm going to get them ready for growth. I'm going to let them know exactly what tools they need. Before you start, I don't want you to get overwhelmed. We took the liberty to get you some resources that you might need to get it done. So let us know what you think. You're actually sharing with them, giving them the resources that's needed so that they can win, that they can excel. After you fulfilled those first 2 steps, let me back it up. You're going to inspire them, then you're going to share and care. Sharing and caring is a mixture of transformational and servant leadership. Then you can get to delivering. It's not just a rah-rah party. We do have things that we have to get done. We do have tasks. We do have to have organization. We need to be well organized, persistent. We need goals. Yeah, people say, can you have goals and action plans at nonprofits? You better. You better let people know that we're not just here for a rah-rah party. And here's where we'd like to be in 3 months and 6 months and 9. People, they respond well to that. They need to see those goals. And they need to be, you have to excel in your networking and getting people together. And say, when you work here, you have no idea with whom else you will meet when you're working in that environment. And you want to share with them all the positive benefits as well as the details so that they can actually get things done. Here's the key. You just can't start the communication there. You can't have the person show up and then you just jump right into delivering. Take the time to inspire, share, and care before you get into delivery. Now, I'm going to take a quick pause right here because you might see where this is going. This is not much different than what should happen every day on the job or in a job environment. That if you really want people to buy in and stay in, inspiring, sharing, caring, and then delivering usually works in about every single leadership theory. And it makes sense because in this layered model that Dr. Wilkes actually laid out, it actually includes every model. So what it does that's very unique is it actually gives you the priority in which you should do them. So I want to encourage you to check this out. Now, let me give you just a brief story. I can't tell you how often I have to encourage people who are working in a nonprofit environment and they're absolutely discouraged. They're the way people are treating that environment. They're saying they're breaking commitments left and right. They tell me they're going to show up, but then they don't show up. And they go through that soliloquy. They go through that environment where they say, how can we get people to be faithful and committed and dedicated? And then over time, their heart gets heavy. They get disengaged. They become unmotivated. And then it's like they're running on fumes. I'm going to start off by saying here is if you're going to inspire someone, you have to be inspired. Recognize your own patterns. Recognize where you are. Find how to get yourself rekindled. Sometimes that might mean taking a break, speaking to the people who actually delegated some responsibility to you. Don't run on E. Don't get to the point where you become so disgusted, frustrated with other people. I'm laughing because I'm telling you, it's like I'm seeing 1,000 different people right now who've talked to me about this. Don't become so disgusted that you start trying to protect yourself from future volunteers, where you look at them and you say, you know what? You said you're going to participate, but I already know from previous experience, you're only going to be here for about 2 days before you quit. So I'm not going to trust you by giving you 2 weeks worth of work. I'm only going to give you 2 days because odds are you're going to leave here eventually. If that's your thought process, even if you don't say it, it will come out in how you talk to them, how you look at them, how you walk around them, how you set up your processes, how you set up things so that when they leave, all will still be well. They will sense it, feel it, hear it, and pick it up, and they will not be inspired. The opposite will happen. They'll actually feel pushed away, untrusted, like they don't want to be part of it. So if you feel that exhausted, if you feel like you've actually been burned that many times, then you need to get re-inspired. You've got to go back to your original sources that gave you inspiration to begin with, because it's hard to inspire someone else if you've already felt de-inspired, discouraged, dejected, exhausted. You've got to find that inspiration back. And then as you progress through these paths of inspiring, sharing, caring, and then delivering, you will see this work. I had an experience once, and this is something to really share with one of the rewards, if you will, of a volunteer. I had a chance to share this story a few times where one of the first jobs or roles that I ever had after I graduated from college, I was hoping to get a job. It took me 2 years almost to get my first job. And I was as dejected as a person could ever be. I said, I can't find a job in engineering anywhere. I did everything that everyone said I should do. I went to school, graduated, all the rest of that, but no one would hire me. Some said you were overqualified. That was in a recession. They wouldn't even call you back. And so what I did one day is I said, at the church that I was attending, They said, we're going to have come on outside and just help the church pull weeds. I said, man, this has got to be the lowest point in my life. So I actually went out there and I was pulling weeds. And here I am, an unemployed graduate of engineering. And I'm literally just pulling weeds out of the church. And there was an elderly lady there, and she looked at me and she said, Aubrey, aren't you an engineer? And I said, yeah. And she was retired. And she said, I'm going to make a phone call for you. And she said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call my son. And my son has a friend who's starting an engineering company. And I'm going to see if my son will tell his friend about you. And to make a long story short, that was my first job in engineering. Tell people those stories, that the reason why you should volunteer is you never know who you'll meet when you get there. And sometimes you're thinking, I'm just going to go help do something, and it may seem completely unrelated to your life, but you have no idea about the contacts you will make when you are actually networking with other people in your community about a completely different task. Share that with them. Inspire that with them, because it was that engineering job that led to probably one of the fastest professional growth periods of my life. It was in that same company that I became an associate vice president within 3 years. So share with them those stories. Tell them their rewards. You may not be able to pay them, but you can introduce them to someone else. Tell them you have no idea who you'll be able to meet as you serve here, and we care about you. If you can use layered model and you can inspire, share, care, and deliver, I am confident you'll begin to move the needle. And that's exactly what we want you to do right here, because you can win even if it's in a nonprofit environment. So make sure you share this podcast, subscribe to this channel, go to faith2lead.com, share with me what you think about this layered leader model. And just remember, it really doesn't matter if it's for profit or nonprofit. You can win. We'll see you next time.